Welcome back to another episode of The Road to CEO. I'm here today with the great Nathan Green, the co-founder and CEO of New Level Radio, which delivers customizable radio networks for hundreds of businesses all over the U.S., including major casinos like the MGM Grand, the Palms, the Mirage, and Mandalay Bay. Nathan, thanks so much for joining me on Road to CEO.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, appreciate you reaching out and looking forward to chatting for sure.
And did I get everything in that intro right?
Yeah, I think that was a heck of an intro. You bet. Yeah, I think you nailed it as far as kind of our initial kind of outreach and plan for sure.
So let's start at the beginning. What's New Level Radio all about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, New Level Radio, we are the go-to provider for music for casinos and hotels across the country. So we come in with a completely curated approach, and we really dive into who's in the space, how long they're in the space, and then obviously if there's deviation in demographics throughout the days and the weeks. And then we actually curate playlists, as well as promos that we curate for these businesses from scratch. So really, we're more of a kind of bespoke service than your typical background music, right? So up until the last probably 10 or 12 years, you kind of had your Muzaks, your Sirius XMs, and that was really the limitation of kind of background music, if you will. We had kind of a different strategy about 16 years ago to kind of curate more of a radio station type feel, more of an experience, a client-driven relationship that kind of taps into music rather than just, hey, let's just throw on, the 80s channel for this demographic and see how it works. So that's kind of how we, got into it. That's a little bit what the business is about, and really our whole goal is to be a resource for our clients, not only from music side, but also from an ROI side, right? By being able to generate revenue through the promotions that we create. And then in between that, just have a wonderful music program that speaks to who's in the space.
So talk more about that. What kind of promos are we talking about? Like radio commercials that are interjected into into the playlists throughout the day? Is that how that works?
Yeah, that's a good question. So our goal was to not only just like a radio station, not only to have great music, but to have a platform where guests and customers could be engaged in what's going on in the property, as well as have a chance to act on those promotional events. So what we do is we write, produce, schedule promo clips that play typically on the casino floor or any other areas that are high traffic areas. Those promos will cover anything from concert events, food promotions, restaurants, new openings, things like that. And we really encourage our clients to track those. And the way we do that is by having them only promote something in property or on store that they're not doing anywhere else. So for example, let's say at MGM Grand, you could say, mention MGM Grand Radio for 10% off tickets to Lady Gaga, right? So there's a cause and effect right there. They can see, hey, we sold an extra 300 tickets at X dollars. So it's something that's not only just, us just saying, hey, this works as a marketing vessel, but it's something that's really trackable. So it's nice too, because we have our own in-house talent. We have a full suite of professional voice actors and actresses that we work with that are on our team. And then we also contract out for specific dialects or languages or things like that. So it really becomes, and hence that's why we're called New Level Radio. It really becomes more of a radio station type vibe, right? We also do sweepers. So a sweeper is you're listening to Foxwoods Radio, or you're listening to Tropicana Radio, or whatever they want to name it, right? So not only we're personalizing the station, but we're also, just kind of elevating the experience from just a typical background situation.
So do you set up a studio on site for your clients, or do you do it all from a central studio?
Yeah, so everything is done off-site. We have small computers that live on property at each one of our clients' location. Those computers are connected through Ethernet so that we can speak to them in real time. So what's awesome is that, we kind of, especially in a casino environment or hotel environment, they're pretty 24/7. So we work in a real world type situation where, if a promo changes, we can delete that in real time. If they have a playlist that needs to be updated, we can facilitate that and then send the command to the box. So what's nice is that, they have all the creative oversight and control, but we do all the heavy lifting. We curate everything, we schedule it, we load it. So really, as long as the power's on in the building, everything runs seamlessly.
So talk to me about the technology because you started this company 17 years ago. I would imagine it was a totally different landscape and the clients you serve probably had totally different options than they do today. What was that like?
Yeah, it's always funny to kind of sit back and think about, kind of how it was back then. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but obviously in technology that was, archaic in nature at the time. I mean, even when we first got started, I mean, we had a few clients even up until about 7, 8 years ago. They were still getting like cassette tapes mailed out to them from Muzak. And that was just like a mind-blowing situation. And even for us, when we first started, we did not have the same technology we had now. We had CDs, we had, more antiquated systems that just weren't as elevated as it is now. So, being able to have a transition of just um a box living and breathing on somebody's, network where we can interact with it when needed and be able to facilitate changes, it just made our life so much easier. And quite frankly, it's made our clients' lives easier too, because there's not a gap in being able to change stuff. So that's a big deal for us.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. Um, did you always want to be CEO? Did you always want to start a company?
Yeah, it's always interesting to go backwards, I guess, in your mind and kind of figure out how we got to where we are in our careers or lives. I never necessarily had this vision for myself as far as just thinking about it. I think just as a kid and growing up, and first jobs I had, I never really felt the excitement that I guess you need to really be successful in something, right? I enjoyed some of the gigs I had. I enjoyed some of the things I did, but I never really felt a driving kind of passion to excel, I guess, at the highest level. When we started New Level Radio, it kind of was a slow burn for me to kind of get to this point, right? Because as you probably know as well, when you start a small business or a new company, you're doing it at night or on the side, or you're doing it as you kind of build to see if it's going to work and it has legs. So as we kind of had the proof of concept going, that's when I started to see that there's really something here. And number one, we knew that there was a market for what we were doing. Most importantly, we were feeling a need and a void that was in the space of music for businesses. So, and then I think organically what happened is you just do everything, right? I mean, the original plan was, my co-founder was going to do A, B, and C, and I was going to do D, E, and F. But in the real world, it doesn't work like that, right? Because there's only a handful of people. So I had to start programming playlists, and I did sales, and I did licensing stuff that I never knew anything about, all those type of things. So I think when you start getting integrated into those processes, you have a real concept of what happens in the whole business. So as you start to do that, and as the business starts to grow, you naturally take on additional levels of responsibility. So, I think it's uh it's something that you don't necessarily, or at least for me, I didn't necessarily start out and be like, hey, I want to be the CEO of this company. It was more just I want to make sure this is the best company by knowing what the hell I'm doing all the time. So I think that really just naturally kind of changed. And as responsibilities change, and as I was kind of taking the lead, so to speak, on doing most of the day to day, then of course there's a natural transition just to the leadership role. But even that is a something that you have to work on all the time, right? Because really managing your business and yourself is one thing, but then as a CEO, managing employees and managing all these other things, that really takes a secondary level of care and knowledge and sympathy and all those type of things. So that's been a really great learning curve for me too, just to see how I kind of wear these multiple hats throughout, my day-to-day work.
I want to return to that, but first, you said something that's pretty intriguing. You said you knew that there was a market for this service? How did you know there was a market?
Yeah, so when we first started, so I was working in radio and TV at the time, out in Hawaii, and a good friend of mine who was the co-founder of the company, um, he was an on-air personality, and we started getting requests from some of the clients to, could you record a special promo for our business, maybe just with your voice, because you're kind of a celebrity? Could you maybe, is there any way we could have some of the music you play on the station, right? So for us, that was kind of a big aha moment. Like, wow, like this is such an underserved market. And I really think there might have been one, maybe two other companies that were doing maybe messaging, but no more than that, if not at least maybe one, but maybe not. I can't even really recall. But we were kind of the first company to really say, no, like this, we're going to take this like a radio station approach with breaks, with promos, with really targeted music to who's actually listening. So we really got into more of like the demographic analysis. What's your average age? How long do they stay in your property? What's their average spend? Do they come once a month? Do they just come on Fridays? That type of thing. So once we kind of saw that, wow, like there really is a need for that. And that's the most important thing, right? I mean, you can start a company where you're not really affecting the market or making any radical change, and it may not work.
Yeah.
We happen to come in at a time where really there was a need for this, and there still is, obviously, of course, but it just was kind of a big paradigm shift in what had been out there before. And since there's been other companies that do similar things with curation, but the good news is nobody really does exactly what we do, which is great.
Yeah, I remember hearing somebody say once that the definition of waste is building a product that no one needs.
I love it.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, I think it's the market tells you, right, at the end of the
Right.
day, you either you put everything out into the ether and you see if it works, and customers in the market will dictate if the business is viable. So luckily for us, especially as you know as well, it's like building a small company. I mean, we're 16 years in, we're very profitable, we do very well. So, the fact that just that we're able to achieve that through all the ups and downs of the last 16 years is kind of speaks to the need of what we offer.
It's a huge accomplishment. So on day one of your business, you thought you'd do A, B, C, and then your partner was going to do D, E, and F, and that quickly kind of changed a little bit. How did that, were you working part-time? Were you, how did it look in the early days?
Yeah, so in the early days, absolutely. So I had a full-time job actually working for a TV station. And so I just kind of started doing it part-time. The great thing about one thing that I did right off the bat is I took a different job with a substantial pay cut, which was a pretty risky move. But with that change, it really freed up time for me. I could travel if I needed to for meetings that we were doing all the time. I mean, I was flying, to Hawaii 5 or 6 times a year, because that's kind of Hawaii and Colorado is where we really started with our growth. And so that change allowed me to not only have time to do it, but also have kind of the mental capital to give this thing a go. So after about probably I think it was the third year or so, I went to my partner and said, hey, like, we're at that point now. Like this is real. So one of us needs to take this full time. So I went ahead and did that. So obviously that kind of catapulted me on the steps that I am to this day to be where I am now, because of just taking that leap. And I think there's that inflection point for any business, right? I mean, you can start, you can build slowly, as a moonlighting or as a part-time job, but at some point, you have to have people that are all in, right, to really make the jump. And the good news is once I did that, the company just continued to grow and elevate, which allowed me to kind of keep doing better.
Did you decide to start hiring employees after that? Like, how does that look?
Yeah, so I've always had the philosophy since we started this is to really hire really slow. And also I learned this after some trial and error with one of our first employees, is really just to hire the person, right? To hire the personality, the fit, when you're a small company, there's not a lot of people. We have a really good group of folks, but it's still small staff for the scale that we have. I mean, we're in 27 states of gaming. We're in the largest hotel casinos in the world and some of the smallest. So it's it's really important. Like I don't have time to hire people and fire people quickly. So we really try to be careful with that. So one philosophy that I've just had that seemed to work for us is I like to bring people on kind of part-time to start, unless it's something that just like, hey, we need this, technical thing, or we need something that has to be full-time right off the bat. But that's a great way for us to gauge, hey, is this a good fit for you? And I mentioned one of our core first employees. We actually moved her position about 3 or 4 different times. And there was a few times where I wasn't sure it was going to work because we were trying to put the square peg into the round hole, because she was like, I want to do this. And we're like, okay, let's do that. And it's not working out. So through that kind of process of just her being a good hire, we found the best fit for her. When we got her in the position where she shined the most, she's been incredible. And she's been with us 16 years. In fact, most of the people we have with us have been with us for, most of the time. So, but now, especially over the last year, since I've become CEO, we've really started to grow. So we've hired about 4 people in the last year. And it's just, it's fun now to kind of see this growth pattern of just me taking some of these things off of my plate that I was doing. And at some point that becomes a hindrance, right? I mean, if I'm doing, 60% of all that we do, is that really the best use of my time? No, it's not. So getting more people that are qualified and that can kind of take those things off of our leaders' plate, then that makes everything run smoother.
So, can you tell me about the focus on gaming and casinos? How come it's so focused in that area?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we got into our first gaming property probably about 3, 4 years in, probably 3 years in. So initially it wasn't a large target for us per se. Once we realized that the casino environment was perfect for a curated solution, it was a no-brainer, right? Because in a casino, you have multiple outlets that have totally different styles of people, right? You might have, if you're in a Vegas casino, the people on the casino floor could be a completely different demographic than the people at the pool, or the people that come to your high-end steakhouse or your Cirque du Soleil show, right? So in that environment where you have multiple F&B outlets, where you have multiple spaces, it really lends itself perfectly for a curated solution. So also too, from a structural profitability, it allows us to have multiple zones of music and multiple areas of music, which obviously is multiple revenue streams. So I think, and gaming and casinos are very marketing focused, right? They have a lot of demographic information on their consumers. They have a lot of allocation of like where people are, how long they're there. And so for us, we can ingest that and then really create amazing programs for them.
So, if this is just my personal curiosity now, but if you have a casino in Virginia, say, and a casino in California, do you see a lot of similarities in the demographics of the people that go to those casinos?
So it's interesting, I think even with our properties that have similar demographics, you still see deviation in kind of what the best music is for them, right? So, you know, a casino in Arkansas with 65 to 72-year-olds is going to be a little bit different music and style than we'd play in a Colorado casino with the same demo, right? It's obviously the influences of music are different in each geographic location. Some of the social norms are different, correct? So I think it's fun for us because every location is kind of a blank canvas, and that's really the beautiful thing for our clients is that no, they're not getting just the cookie cutter channel, right? That most of other services provide. We're actually basing these programs on who's actually really in your space, and allowing changes based off that, right? So every program is unique. So let's say you're in a casino in Biloxi and there's a song that just doesn't quite jive for that market, we can take it out because it's not like a Sirius XM where that 80s channel is going to 25,000 other locations, right? So even with a similar demo, it is always very interesting just as we kind of walk through it with our clients, like, oh yeah, maybe country just doesn't really work in this area where we thought it would. Hey, it's the South, they should love country. Well, not necessarily, right? It's Austin, maybe they don't, right? So it's and I think most importantly with that answer is that it really makes us nimble, right? To be flexible and to change and to be kind of um willing to try other things for clients where we have that ability to do so.
Do you get a lot of client input on what kind of songs should be on the playlist, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. I mean, client engagement is really at the core of why I think we've been successful. We have a real monthly connection with our clients through the promo information they send us. They're very involved in what's working, what's sounding great. So it's not a set it and forget it type situation. And that makes us a resource for our clients, right? They know that if they need to change something or they really have input on a particular genre or playlist, that they can do that without much hassle. And I think, it's all about the people, is what I've said since we started this, and the relationships. And that's the truth. I mean, I physically go to every single location we have, and that's harder to do now as we grow, but at least every, 1 year to 24 months in person, have lunch, take notes on the property, be able to kind of know what's going on. And that makes it more real world for us because we've been in the spaces. We've had a chance to take that input and sit down with somebody and be like, yeah, the pool music is sounding great, but it's in the afternoon, it's just getting a little too dance vibes. And then I can sit there and be like, oh yeah, because they're not getting younger during the day. It's staying 55, 70. So, EDM is not going to work. Right. So, I think the input is we want the input and we need the input to facilitate our programs in the best way.
Very interesting. So you said something I want to come back to. So I think you said you used a phrase like you hire for the role, for the person and not the role when you're making a hiring decision. Can you talk to that a little more? Like, what do you mean
Yeah,
by that?
I think that it's it almost sounds counterintuitive in a way, but I really feel for us that's been the best way that we've gotten the most out of our employees. And the reason why is that we're not, you know, Microsoft. We don't have 75,000 employees, right? We're a small team that really has to work well together, that has to be intuitive on what people need and how we can be helpful. So I think that, a lot of the stuff now, it's not heart surgery, right? I wouldn't tell you hire for the person if it's heart surgery or a doctor, because that makes no sense. But for what we do, a lot of this stuff can be learned. It can be trained, right? I mean, one of the curators we hired a couple years ago, had no musical background whatsoever, was an admin and just loved putting together playlists. So I said, hey man, send me a lounge playlist. Send me what you would program on a casino floor from 6 to 10. Send me a classic rock list for a sports bar, whatever, and just let him do his thing. And it was awesome. And the reason why is because he had a passion for it, right? He had no experience in that sector. But I think when you do it that way, then you can allow people to grow. And for us, as our company grows, we have more roles that are needed to be filled, right? We need more admin, we need more curators, we need more PR, we need more marketing. So, after a while, maybe like, oh wow, like I never knew Will was, had a great voice and he's doing podcasting, and maybe we grab him for some voice work, like things like that. Like those things happen organically when you just hire the fit of the personality. And then when the team is gelled, then there's more cohesion on supporting each other. So I feel like it's worked really well for us.
Well, for the record, I am available to do some voiceovers for
I
casinos.
love
So
it.
yeah,
Yes.
keep me in
I'll
mind.
take you up on that. I will.
So, what do you wish you had known when you first became CEO that you know now? Or actually, we could take that back further if you want. So, when you first co-founded the company, what's something that you wish you knew back then that you learned later?
That's great. Yeah, those are both great questions. I mean, I think going back to when we started, what I wish I would have learned is, I think, and I think subconsciously I knew this, or I wouldn't have kept going through the fire, but it's just an overnight success is years and years of work. I mean, even the Steve Jobs and all these the Elon Musk, like you see it when it just blows up, but there's so many years before that, and I think I knew that. But there's a lot of days, where you're broke, you're telling your family like this is gonna work. We just have to keep going. And I think that's what I would tell anybody young that's starting. Like if you have a passion for it, and you feel that it's something you can see through, then stick it through and don't, you have to just be okay with it taking time. I mean, we grow every year, but it's just a nice steady growth, which is great. I mean, but it's not like you just wake up one morning and you're just blowing up all over the world. It just doesn't work like that, even if people see that from the outside. So I would just say patience. I would tell myself, um, learn as much as you can. And then on the CEO question, I think um, the biggest thing I've learned is just really being better, just managing people and letting people just do their thing, right? And I think I've always been good at that, but as we are growing pretty rapidly right now, I've really been trying to set more processes in place. So it's like if I actually want to, go somewhere for a week and have no phone, which I've never done in 16 years, that I can do it, right? Or if some of our employees want to, go off the grid, which we encourage them to do, that they don't feel nervous about missing something. So just kind of more automation, more processes in place written down where we have things that are pretty self-explanatory. Because when you're smaller, you're kind of just do it, right? You're not like sitting like, hey, let me write down a workflow for this that we can disseminate to 20 people. Like that's just not in your head. But now as a CEO, I think it's something that I'm thinking about, and we've really been taking some steps in 2024 to do that.
So I like to ask this question of every CEO I talk to lately. How has AI affected either the business or yourself personally? Has it affected the business?
That's a great question. So I would say yes and no. Of course, AI just in itself is going to affect every business because there's just more tools and resources to automate things or to make things easier. So I fully embrace using whatever we can to make everyone's workflow and patterns smoother. However, we've always done everything from hand, right? Like we don't program our playlist like on an algorithm. Like literally we pick every song. We drag and drop songs from lists we built before. We physically search artists, right? And I don't see us ever changing that because you just it's just like analytics in a football game, right? It's like the analytics tell you 40, 60% of the time to go for it on 4th and 4, but that doesn't take into account like it's Patrick Mahomes. They're gonna get the first down no matter like, or it's like, right. And so I take that same philosophy in what we do. It's like the human touch of what we do is why we've been so successful. It's because people can like, Nathan, hey, we're doing a concert signing tonight with Tiesto in the lobby. Can you put some songs in there when he does his signing? Like that's something that AI just can't generate. Yeah, it can generate the tracks. You could probably tell AI to build you a 90s soft rock playlist, but is that going to work for 27 states of gaming, with multiple demographics and socioeconomic? No, it's not. There's no way we'll ever be the same. So I think it's a valuable tool. I think it's a tool that's not going anywhere. It's kind of like it's inevitable. It's like just like when we move from tapes to CDs to streaming, like you're not going to stop it. But I think there's a way you can use it responsibly while still being true to what we are at New Level Radio, which is a curated service.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds really reasonable. For my own business, which is an advertising agency, it has changed the way we prepare for certain things. it's changed the way we do first drafts of certain things,
Mhm.
but it has not changed fundamentally any of the finished products we deliver to clients. It's not now, maybe that's because AI is still in its infancy and, I mean, which I'm sure it is, and it'll be very interesting to see how it progresses, but it has changed some of our productivity. And in fact, there are some services that we offer now that we wouldn't offer in the absence of AI. Certain things around writing that
Mhm.
where the outlines and the first drafts were so time consuming that it just wasn't viable. And now it is more viable to do some of those services. Other than that, it has not really transformed things, at least in my business yet.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, if you can use, you know, if you can use it as a tool to just make more administrative tasks or things to just get that take so much time to do, I think that's a huge
Yeah,
resource. And I'm sure it'll get better and better where it can really, facilitate what you need to have happen. But like you said, I mean, I the interaction is so key with people. I mean, even back to COVID, right? I mean, I wrote an article like 2 months into COVID, like, dude, this Zoom thing, all this stuff is awesome, but it will never replace just sitting in front of someone face to face. The cues you pick up, the emotions, the pictures you see on their desk, what's going
absolutely.
on in the space. There's nothing that will ever trump that because humans just need that physical interaction with people. And I think especially for businesses now, so much of that has been lost, right? It's like, our teams don't really travel anymore. There's no need. I can just jump on a Zoom, blah, blah, blah. Like I don't believe in that, not even in 1%. I mean, the biggest value I get is sitting down with the people that work with us and that are clients and just chatting with them about whatever. And that's where you build the long-term relationships that get you clients that are lifetime clients. So I think um I definitely embrace it, but I don't anticipate it being a replication by any
Yeah.
stretch.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And you said something else that I want to jump on. So you're in a business that provides a service to in the entertainment industry. And so what were you thinking in March 2020 when everybody got shut down? Like what was going through your head?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm sure most people had that same experience. I mean, for us, every every single one of our clients was shut for months. I mean, some couple of months, some 6, some almost a year. So, that it was a real scare. I mean, I
Yeah.
obviously, I was sitting there thinking like, are we going to have a company after this? And I know obviously I'm not alone in that. So I'm not lamenting like we're the only ones that experienced that because we absolutely were not. But that's a scary feeling. I think also too for me, and I don't know if you had any of these similar thoughts, like, we're always going. Like it's my life is kind of nonstop. So when all of a sudden I went from like being the busiest I'd ever been to having literally nothing to do. I mean, I might get a one email a day, maybe once every three. I mean, and those were very just, hey, we're not sure when we're gonna open,
Yeah.
whatever. So I think that that's the biggest kind of you almost have an identity crisis in a way, right? I was sitting there like,
Yeah,
who am I? Like what? Like if I don't have this, like do I have anything? Am I just, so I think that was one of the biggest challenges
absolutely.
that we had as a company and then me just personally. So, but I think I took that same attitude that I had before is just of, whatever it is, like we'll get through it. And we had to adapt, right? We started doing a lot of COVID messaging, right? So that would be one of our
Mhm.
pitches, like, hey, whenever you do open or even for your employees, they're essential, right? Because a business that large, like a casino, they're never really shut, right? I mean, all these things need maintenance and all this stuff. So, hey, let's promote to them that, messaging about safety, messaging about, positivity, things like that. So, everyone had to pivot to survive. And we were lucky enough that not only did we survive, but we kind of thrived after everything kind of cleared up. So,
Well, that's really interesting. I totally relate to that. I remember, I'm sure I'll never forget March 2020. I started just getting phone call after phone call after phone call of clients needing to go on pause, needing to shut down their service because they were getting shut down by the government, and we wanted to treat our customers right. We wanted to help them get through, this catastrophe that we're all going through together. But it got to a point where I didn't want to answer my phone anymore. I've
Yeah.
never had that experience, but it's just, what the call is. It's just, and really that lasted for maybe 2 days, where
Hmm.
I remember, I think it was the World Health Organization, or no, I think Donald Trump shut down the travel from Europe, and at that point everybody started canceling. Everybody started
Yes.
closing things down, and it was just a nonstop nightmare.
Yeah.
So, and to your point, it gets depressing. So I felt, you start to feel some depression kind of come through,
Yeah,
because
for sure.
you're moving so fast, you're interacting with people, you're solving problems, you're making money, everything's going right, and then boom. Now for us, we lost 35% approximately of our revenue overnight. We had a
Man.
lot of clients that were B2B companies. They weren't, consumer based, so they didn't shut down. And so that was good. And then we started getting, after maybe 3 or 4 weeks that were really brutal, then we started getting a lot of phone calls from companies that were expanding, companies that were trying to weather, the storm, because when times are tough, you don't want to necessarily shut down advertising, because that's bringing in
Right.
customers. So there were probably 3 to 4 weeks where, you're existing off of a prayer. And
Yeah.
and then after that, things started to turn around. And for us, it took about 12 months, I think, to surpass where we were prior to the shutdown. So we lost the 35%, and then, we started to get it back, and then we were in positive territory about 12 months later.
That's great. No, that's awesome. I mean, it's great when you can kind of see that worst case scenario, if you will, and then kind of just get through the fire. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So, was COVID maybe was that the biggest obstacle that you faced in the 17 years that you've been with the company?
Yeah, I would say for sure. Yeah, that was probably the biggest scare and the biggest downturn for us. Absolutely was COVID. Obviously, we had other challenges along the way with, making sure, with our licensing partners and making sure we're, all copacetic there, and, challenges of, wondering if it was actually going to work. That obviously was very scary too, when you take the leap from the safety net of benefits and, a salary and all that kind of stuff. But COVID was definitely the first time where I was like, oh man, like if this goes on for another, 6 months, it's just, most businesses just don't operate on that structure where they can last for more than, I mean, look at a restaurant. I mean, even big restaurant chains, I mean, they're like 30, 60 days from being absolutely wiped out, right? And you saw that. I mean, we saw how many places just never came back. So, there was no reason to be in denial and think that that couldn't happen to your business. And I think it absolutely could have. So I'm thankful, obviously, number one, that it didn't, but number two, that everybody kind of had the wherewithal just to kind of take a breath after a month or so and realize, like, how do we pivot from this for sure.
Hmm. What's the biggest factor, if you can name it, that drives your growth at the moment? Like what do you think is driving your growth?
So up until recently, probably the last couple years, it was really just word of mouth. Obviously, in the gaming space, we have pretty well-known clients. So obviously there's instant credibility there, as they're kind of the industry leaders in gaming. So that's been helpful. But over the last couple years, I really found that just, networking through like LinkedIn, it has been really helpful for our business. We still do a lot of traditional, just reaching out. We still do some cold calling. I guess more warm calling would be the word. Not complete cold, but just, and then just obviously recommendations from clients. Our clients love what we do. Most of them obviously are extremely happy. So they're kind of championing our cause when we're out there too. So, we don't do a lot of traditional marketing and advertising outside of some kind of LinkedIn stuff and things like that. Obviously some trade shows, those are helpful for us because those are very specific to what we're doing. So that's helpful to get in front of the right people that are looking for kind of marketing solutions. But other than that, just kind of just grinding still, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I think it's really important, just think about this out loud. Like it's very important as in a leadership role to never ask anybody to do anything that you wouldn't do, right? So it's like
Mm.
I still do all the same stuff that I did when I was, 17 years ago. I still cold call. I still do all those things that I would do in the beginning because number one, it keeps me grounded and it keeps me focused on what it actually takes to achieve growth. But number two, it's important to kind of show that you're willing to do what it takes to get things done.
I love that. And there was a CEO who said, so in the advertising space, one of the CEOs that I follow, he said that he likes to spend a third of his time focusing on strategic matters, a third of his time on sales and marketing, and a third of his time talking to clients. And I think that keeps me, and so
Smart.
I kind of aspire to that, and I've always aspired to that. And at this point, now that the company's a little bigger, I think it does exactly what you just said. It kind of keeps me grounded, keeps me fresh and sharp. And now in the beginning of my company, it was totally different. Because just by necessity, I spent probably 80% of my time with clients or something, close to that. And so I've been able to kind of reshape by necessity, how I spend my time a little bit. But I do think it's really important to stay grounded somehow.
Yeah, no, yeah, you said it perfectly. I mean, I think it is very important, and it's also it just it shows your employees and the people that work for you just what you're willing to do, right? And I think that's, I've been really fortunate too. I think that most of the people we work with are really genuinely nice people. When we first got into gaming, I was thinking, oh man, is this going to be, kind of an abrasive type clientele, very kind of, you know, um, short and sweet. But I found actually the complete opposite. Most everyone we work with is very engaging, very warm, very friendly. And really they're the same way with their own employees and their own staff. And I think that's just such a great way to be. I think there's been this kind of misconception in leadership that you have to be a hard ass or you have to be authoritarian in some nature. And I think the complete opposite. I mean, I'm very transparent with people that work for us. Um, they obviously understand that there is a dichotomy and there's roles, of course. And that's a good thing as well. Don't get me wrong. That's very important too. But also I feel that everybody feels safe to just talk openly about how they feel, talk about challenges, talk about suggestions. I've never claimed to know everything and all and everything. So it's important to get that feedback on how can we do things better. And really doing that without an ego is the most important thing, right? It's like my job is to grow the business. My job is to facilitate employee happiness and growth. It's not about Nathan Green at all. It's about New Level Radio and how can we kind of build this brand and build this company. So I always try to remember that. I mean, everyone has an ego, whether you're just an employee, a person, a retiree, or a CEO, right? So that's always part of something that we all have to deal with. But I really think it's important just to kind of to lead with kindness, to lead with engagement, and lead with growth. Let people know that there's a lot of room for growth at this company, whether it's um, expansion, full time, part time, just working a couple hours a week, whatever someone wants. So I think that's good when people feel valued.
Absolutely. So we're getting towards the end of the time here. Were there any topics we missed here? Anything? How can people get in touch with you if they listen to this and they want to reach out?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Number one, thanks for reaching out to us. Always thrilled to obviously chat about what we do, and it's always fun to kind of engage with people and shoot the breeze. So I appreciate you reaching out. Yeah, it's really easy to find us, newlevelradio.com. My name's Nathan Green. You can always email info@newlevelradio.com for any information. Our website is a great place to get in touch with us. So always happy to chat about business, life, or anything in between for sure.
Well, we'll put all that information into the show notes here. Nathan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.